and it's the start again, political blast with myself and the amazing Helen Thomas, who has turned up. There she is. Let's invite her to be co-host. Dum dum dum. I believe that's sent. Morning, Tom. You should be getting the invite any second now. Let's have a look.
Hello.
Yes, it's
It
worked.
worked.
How are you?
I'm good. That worked much better. We should have a break more often.
Yeah, shouldn't we just? Let me just quickly get the legals out of the way. Nothing discussed on this space session. I'll start again. Nothing discussed on this spaces session constitutes trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by POQ Global Limited, Jones POQ, or POQ or its affiliates, including the hosts, which, as you know by now, is Miss Edmund Helen Thomas, way, and Mr. Ryan Paisley, way. There you go. What's
Hello.
been happening? What's been happening? How are
What
you?
hasn't been happening? What hasn't
Oh,
been
this is
happening?
it.
Yeah.
I see Rachel
Uh, uh,
Reeves is strutting around Davos saying everything's all right.
yeah. Well, there's a quote in an FT article this morning that I thought was quite good about that. Let me just
Oh,
get
go
it
on.
up and running here. Oh, sorry, live happening.
That's
Right.
fine.
So no, but because it is relevant for many more reasons. So basically, so the FT is reporting that one senior Labour MP said people are holding their heads in disbelief at her approach to easing regulations for business. I think what they mean by that is like the Labour Party are holding their heads in disbelief
Yeah, yeah,
at Rachel Reeves. The way that the FT put it was, whining and dining plutocrats with her easing of regulations. Um, but that's not just like a comedy story. That is the heart of what Rachel Reeves's problems could well be, which is that her own party are obviously not very happy with this direction that she's going to have to
well, and
take.
also let's not forget, it wasn't that long ago that Starmer and Rachel from Accounts were hosting BlackRock at a swanky dinner.
Yes, indeed. Um,
It, it
yeah.
just all feels a bit like
Should we
it's
get?
just
Shall we talk? Yeah, okay. Well, we'll
yeah.
carry on talking about Rachel. I know everyone wants to talk about Trump
No, no,
because
no,
it's
no,
all.
no, no. You've got some structure. You go, you go, you go. Because otherwise,
No,
I'm
no. Let's
waffle.
start with this. No, because because the thing is that what Rachel Reeves has been doing in the last few days is massively relevant because a lot of it is happening because everyone is looking at Trump and not really
Yeah,
looking at her. So can you imagine if we didn't have the Trump jamboree, we would really be talking about the UK because not only is she in Davos and totally changing direction on kind of her opinions about regulators and regulations. Um, there was also the UK PSNBR figure, which is the public debt figure, which was not only high but higher than expected, and in fact the third highest December number for public borrowing ever. But sorry, particularly on the debt interest cost element of the public sector net
right.
debt.
Yeah,
So again, no one's really talking about it that much because there's so many other things, but that would be big news anyway if the if the government's borrowing more than it's getting in, spending more than it's getting in.
yeah,
Um, but particularly relevant now because of what's been happening to gilts since the start of the year, and because it will impact the OBR's update in March. So if you add up all of the spending year to date, fiscal year to date, we're about now 4 billion above where the OBR said it would be. Now, okay, four isn't much, just a bit of a rounding error on 129 billion, but it's still not good news for Rachel
no.
Reeves.
Well, yeah,
Um,
exactly. It's not like it's not like there's 4 billion going spare at the best of times, even though it
no,
is a small.
and remember, if anyone remembers, in October her headroom was 9.9 billion. So, um, whichever way around you look at this, she was running with very thin margins anyway, and these are just eating away at it. Um, and so what you're seeing from Rachel Reeves is, scrabbling around trying to pull any lever marked growth, which
Yeah,
appears so that the other big things that have happened in these last few days when everyone was watching Melania's hat, which I was also watching. I did
the
like Melania.
Hamburglar.
I just find it. I find her captivatingly distracting, and I know that's terrible. We shouldn't talk about what women wear or what anyone wears, but there was something about that hat. It was just.
It's the same hat as the Hamburglar wears.
Oh, that's why it's so distracting.
There you
Yeah.
go. See, I'm here for all the fashion advice.
You are, you are, you are. Anyway, before we talk about Melania's hat, no, we won't carry on about that. We will talk about Trump. But the other couple of things that have been going on with the government are. So um, Santander UK said we're thinking of moving. Sorry, Santander said we're thinking of moving out of the UK. Then on the same day, Rachel Reeves and the Treasury intervene in a Supreme Court ruling, or there's a case going on with the Supreme Court about mis-selling on car finance.
Yes.
For anyone who, I don't know if people have been following this or not over the
It's
years,
the new
and
PPI or the old
yeah,
PPI. Yeah.
yeah. Do you want to explain it? Or you want me to
No, not
explain it?
really.
Yeah, it's all right. Well, the thing is, it is quite dull, isn't it? Really, basically, there was a certain period where when people, if they took out a car financing deal, there were commissions in it, but they may not have been aware of those commissions, and it could be a whole mis-selling scandal, and the regulators looking into it. And of course, banks are. Oh yeah, we can swear on this podcast. Banks are shitting
Yes, but
themselves
yeah.
about the amount of money they might have to set aside for this, because obviously it racks up to quite a lot over the
Yeah.
years. So the fact that the Treasury are now making it, they've made a. Shut up, Richard. Richard's humming in the background. To be fair, this is a boring bit, but the reason I'm mentioning it sounds really technical, but it's quite unusual. It's unusual for the Treasury to say, "I want to get involved in a court case because maybe the regulator's gone a bit too far here." Now, let's just remember the regulator is trying to protect consumers, so you'd think that might not go down very well. I mean,
No,
I don't know if
it's
Martin
it's
Lewis
an
has
odd
said
one.
anything about it yet, but it's yeah, well, depending on how this goes, you could portray it as, government intervenes to try and stop consumers getting redress for the wool
Well,
being pulled over their eyes.
yeah, it's one of those situations which kind of are happening more and more frequently that you're sat here thinking, if this was the Tory party and
Ah,
yeah,
man.
right, if it was them getting involved and like the Treasury under a Tory
Mm,
chancellor getting involved basically to side with big
big
banks, because that's
business.
exactly
Yeah.
what's happened, it would
Mm,
be all over the papers, and
mm,
Labour would be throwing their toys out the pram, probably correctly. Um,
mm.
but yeah, it does seem a bit odd, to
And then
put it
the other
mildly.
part to it is that so they wrote letters on this Christmas Eve to all the 17 regulators in the UK saying, you've got to come up with growth, and we need growth, come up with it. Um, and then they've all been like, I bet they loved getting that on Christmas Eve. They've all
Yeah,
been all been trying to come up with ways to do this. So the what is it, the PRA, the Prudential Regulation Authority, which is this like macro prudential Bank of England stuff, was saying, well, actually, can you take climate stuff out of the Bank of England's remit? Like, as in, don't force us to look further and further into like whether this helps with climate change, because it's just expensive and it stops us. It makes us like intervene.
yeah.
When you want growth, we shouldn't have
This
to.
is it.
So,
It's like
so that's
the
kind
only
of
thing
ironic.
the only the only thing
Change here.
regulators can do to support or boost growth is to stop regulating. You
Yeah.
you're basically telling the letter was basically, thinly veiled, please stop over regulating. Thanks.
Well, but the irony, Mr. Paisley, of that is they're only regulating because that's what the government's told them to do in the first place.
Well,
So
no,
the government
exactly.
could rip up the regulations. It's kind of not for the government to say to a regulator, "Oh, interpret the rules to do more for growth." It's like the government has to say, "This is what we
Yeah,
want, and we don't want
they-
these regulations." I mean, look at Trump ripping up. Like, basically, if you if you've got a job in DEI, well, you don't have it anymore because
yeah,
that's
exactly.
it. He's decided that's unproductive. Now, people may or may not agree with that, but that's what he's doing.
Yeah,
So it's quite an interesting switch to see the two different sides on this. But the the other part to this, leaning on the regulators in the UK is, again, this may have gone under the radar and it sounds very small, but it's quite important. They managed to get rid of the chair of the CMA, which is the Competition and Markets Authority. A guy called Marcus Bockerink has been fired, basically.
right.
I mean, he stepped down because I think Reeve said, oh, he realised his vision did not align with the government's, or some nonsense. But this is the first big sort of firing or getting rid of somebody from this government. I think. Well, okay, apart from Keir Starmer getting rid of Sue Gray, but it's the first big. How can I put it?
Cal.
Scalp, says Richard. Yeah, that's quite
Yeah,
good. I like
that's
that
not a
word.
bad way
Yeah,
of putting it.
look
Yeah, yeah,
at
exactly.
that. Yeah. First big scalp, and no one's really talking about it that much, but it's quite a big deal because this is the Competition and Markets Authority, right? Again, this is supposed to be the body that stops big business stitching everything up to do over the consumer, basically.
Yeah,
But the CMA got everyone in big business very wound up because they blocked or initially blocked this Microsoft Activision deal about 18 months ago, which was a massive, massive deal. And then everyone was like, whoa, where did that come from?
yeah,
Um, so, but it's all the same story as what we're talking about, which is it's all kind of playing into what the bigger businesses want. That is quite an. The other strange thing about firing the chair of the CMA is he's like part-time non-executive. He's not the chief executive of the thing. That's a woman called Sarah Cardell. So I have to actually say that I think that it was the Tory business minister saying, sorry, Shadow now, obviously, city minister saying, did they aim and miss? As in,
oh, got you.
were they trying to go for the chief executive? Couldn't
Yeah,
actually quite do that, so just went for the chair. Also, he's not that. He wasn't key to the direction of the CMA. Is it also a way of showing all the other regulators, watch out, your head's
yeah.
on the firing line if
It's
you
the
don't?
sacrificial lamb.
Exactly.
Just
Exactly.
just whilst we're talking about that, so there's something that kind of struck me as well as like, yeah, they're asking everyone to have ways to boost growth and stuff like this. But the elephant in the room is a lot of issues we're having with growth, and Radcliffe and all that have mentioned it is just the price of energy in the UK. Yeah,
Mm.
so we're going with everyone's fishing around for everyone in the Labour Party is fishing around for ways to increase growth and drive growth forward. Meanwhile,
Mm.
we've got huge chemical industries kind of shuttering down because of electricity costs, and
Mm.
Ed Miliband hasn't said a word about maybe tailing or reducing his massive over ambitious push for net zero. We're seeing already,
Well,
we're seeing in Europe, we're seeing that being scaled back. In the US, obviously, we've seen that scale back now. Trump's there. It just feels like maybe that's the next shoe to
yeah,
drop.
I think you're right.
Yeah,
I think you're
well,
spot on.
especially it'll be I'm expecting some energy related headlines over the next 48 hours. Obviously, we've got this big storm coming. So
Oh,
obviously,
yeah.
solar will be down at zero, and I know it does get too windy for wind turbines sometimes, and this feels like
Mm.
one of those times when it will do. So it looks like we'll be importing more and more electricity over the next 72 hours. And I'm obviously saying this because Random Task, my dear friend Martin, who's listening in, actually is helping to build Hinkley Point at the moment. So there you go, up the nuclear.
Ooh, well
There
done.
you
Hello to him. Yeah,
go.
well, and that taps into my bigger point about all of what I've been rambling on about, which is Rachel Reeves might have this plan, but Ed Miliband has his plan, and the Labour Party is both government and opposition, and they are going to get more and more frustrated and wound up by this because for a lot of them, well, for a number of them, and it may well become a majority of them, these decisions she's making are not what they signed up for.
Yeah,
Not just. I don't just mean like I wasn't in the manifesto. I mean they'll be wondering why must they stand behind something that they maybe personally fundamentally really don't believe is the way
yeah,
forwards.
yeah. No,
Um,
exactly.
so to draw it all together for markets, whilst there seems to be a bit more stability and guilt because basically the market's gone right. Well, she's missed her numbers, so she's going to have to raise taxes or cut
Yes, yeah, yeah,
spending. Both of those things, of the hiking taxes or cutting spending, are going to potentially tear the party apart because
yes.
they're not. Again, yeah, they're not things people signed up for, and they're certainly not things that I would highly imagine that it will not go down very well with the voters, either or both of those options,
Well, no,
of
exactly.
any
Yeah,
of any description, whoever you vote for. Um,
it's it does feel. Pardon me. It does feel increasingly fragmented. And it's to be fair,
mm,
to you, give yourself big ups. You did call this very early on, well, pretty much straight after the election, saying that
oh.
how long until we start seeing a very fractured Labour Party.
Yeah, and it's being accelerated by, basically Rachel Reeves is now like every single one of you listening to this call who trades gilts or swaps or sterling in the UK. Um, she's going to watch every single data point because
Yeah,
she's boxed herself into such a degree that um, because she's scrambling around trying to find any savings anywhere. So that's why you're getting things like in the middle of the school year, they're removing funding for Latin at secondary schools, state secondary schools.
yeah,
I think to save 4 million quid. But it's because they're going around every single department being like, oh my God, we need to get rid of
yeah,
it now, now,
yeah.
so the numbers add up. Um, but the problem with doing it piecemeal like that is you may only be a small number of people who care about that point, but if you do it 100 times over with 100 different policies and you add it all up, everyone's going to be upset about their thing, aren't they?
Yeah. No,
That's
this
the
is it.
problem.
This is
Rather
it.
than
Exactly.
putting a penny on income tax, which, yeah, okay, everyone would also be very upset about, but everyone would be in it together. And if you could have articulated why you were doing that from the very beginning, maybe you could have got people on board. But they didn't do that, so we're not
No,
going down
no,
that path.
exactly. It's
So the other thing that's come out recently, sorry, is the opinion polls. So if anyone's looking at these, we're at like basically 25% for each of the Tories and Reform and Labour. But I would think that Reform are going to shoot up the opinion polls into top place, probably on 35% before too long, simply because
well,
of these kinds of policies is splitting and upsetting everybody.
whilst we're talking about that, give me two
Oh,
seconds.
oh, we're going to get the Betfair update
This
live.
open up Betfair. Right, next general election. What have we got here? Um, Well, Labour are still marginally favourites by a pip. Labour choice is 2.85, Conservatives are about 2.88, and Reform are 5.5. So there's
Hmm.
not much in it, to be fair. Let's just quickly check on next
Yeah,
Prime
check on
Minister.
next Prime Minister. Yeah.
It's still Nigel Farage is the favourite.
What's
But
his?
remember, this is next Prime Minister after Keir, so this excludes if Keir did win a second term,
Yeah.
which is why
What's
he's probably
what's the Farage odds
Raj,
or price?
4.2. 4.2.
Is that's similar to when we last looked at it?
Yeah,
Because we haven't
I,
looked at that in a
it's
month,
been
have we?
hovering around there. Yeah, it's basically been flatlining around 4 for quite some time. It did pop out to 5 point something after Musk kind of tipped the other
Mm,
fella. But
yeah.
yeah, but then it came as soon as he came back out, then he backed Farage as our dear leader, and then Farage's price came back down. But yeah, that's what's going on in the UK market, well, the UK bet markets anyway for
But it's
political.
worth everyone keeping an eye on that because the what's just happened in gilt markets and sterling in the last 3 weeks is not over. That is like
No,
that's the beginning
yeah, this
of
I was saying exactly this to someone a few days ago. It's like, no, this doesn't normally work like a one and done. This is yeah, this is just the end of the beginning. Um,
exactly. Yeah,
I
exactly.
think
The end
there's
of the
far
beginning.
more to play out, especially, as you say, especially when we start finding out more information about just how far over the costings or how wrong the costings have been so far. And also, I saw a piece in the paper yesterday about we
Mm.
could be looking to spend up to 60 billion in refurbing infrastructure, UK infrastructure like schools and
Mm.
stuff. So, there's a lot
Mm.
of money that needs to be spent.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. So flipping over to the US, which is
Yes, let's
obviously
do that.
taking the spotlight. Um, so well, where do we begin? Can I just say, right before the inauguration, I said, right, I was saying to people that there's going to be an absolute raft of executive orders, like
Yeah.
so many we won't know which way to turn. Then I was talking to an American friend, and he said, "You know what? I bet you he gets his desk out and just signs them there and then in the
Yeah.
in the, in the auditorium." I was like, "Yeah, that'd be great entertainment." And lo and behold, my mate was right. There he is. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think anyone has ever signed documents at a desk in a sports stadium before, or whatever concert arena it was in. I mean, it's just, and then he threw the pens at a cheering audience. I mean, it was
Yeah.
crazy, crazy,
I
but
like
all part
it.
of the spectacle. Yeah, I mean, it's all part of the spectacle. Do you know what? Here's the thing. I'm going to go back, and I actually encourage people to do this. Read The Art of the Deal from 1987, which is Trump's,
Oh,
first
that's a good
magnum
point, actually.
opus.
I've not actually read that myself. Yeah, I'm going to give that a read.
do, because it is. Um, you don't need to get very far into it. It's also obviously extremely easy to read. But he hasn't changed. I'm just trying to get the. I'll get you the quotes from that. Because this is how he operates. Okay, so beginning of his book, I get up in the mornings very early, around 6. Spend the first hour or so of each day reading the morning newspapers. I usually arrive at my office by 9 and I get on the phone. There's rarely a day with fewer than 50 calls, and often it runs to over 100. In between, I have at least a dozen meetings. The majority occur on the spur of the moment, and few of them last longer than 15 minutes. I rarely stop for lunch. I leave my office by 6:30, but I frequently make calls from home till midnight and all weekend long. It never stops, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I try to learn from the past, but I plan for the future by focusing exclusively on the present. That's where the fun is. And if it can't be fun, what's the point?
See, now
That
this is the kind
that
of
is him.
easy to read book that I need in my life.
Yeah. And then he goes on and he says, like, Monday, 9 a.m. My first call is to Alan Ace Greenberg on the trading floor of Bear Stearns, a major Wall Street investment banking firm. Anyway, quite funny. But he goes on to all of his, and his first few calls is like investment banker, politician, radio show host, commissioner of the US Football League, blah, blah, blah. Oh, then he stops for lunch, which is a can of tomato juice. But what I mean is, he is just that kind of constant calling up, like banging heads together,
Yeah,
different bits of life. So sometimes people are like annoyed and upset about his like entertainment way of doing things, but it is him. It's all
yeah,
he couldn't imagine business being any other way. I think I put it as yeah. I sent out my bi-weekly, and I said, there is no place where politics starts and marketing ends. It's all one thing for him. So
yeah. Yeah, that's his default setting, right? This is, it's not, I don't, he's not phoning it in just because he's now president. I think, like you said, that's just how
that's
he's
just how he does
always
it.
been.
That's just how he does.
Yeah,
Yeah. So it does mean if you haven't got Truth Social, you need it, or you definitely need to follow that as a Twitter account that retweets what he puts out on Truth Social
yeah,
when he does it. Because obviously he's just done the one on Russia and sanctions and a deal with Putin.
yeah.
That is how it's going to be done, and it's so people say it's chaotic and they didn't like it in the first time. Well, it can make trading quite exciting, obviously, because
Well, exactly. The headline risk is back.
yeah, exactly. But in a way, I don't find anything he's done so far to be in any way surprising. I mean, he's just
No,
done what he said he was going to do, hasn't he?
yeah, yeah, no, exactly that. There's, in actual fact, I think he's kind of, in my opinion, maybe even been a little bit more subdued than I was
Oh
expecting
yeah,
because
yeah.
we haven't
Considered.
had tariffs yet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
so so tariffs is really what it's all about from a market's perspective.
Yeah,
Um, Although, by the way, I will just say that one thing I hadn't quite realised was on the raft of other things he's doing, but where he's calling the Mexican cartels terrorists, that of course means he can then, well, it could be able to send in uh,
yeah,
special
yeah.
forces to Mexico to take them out, which,
Well, funny enough, I said exactly this to a friend of mine at the weekend, or whenever, whatever day of the week it was, this week, and said basically by doing that, it means, and very crudely put, could just go over and drop bombs in
yep,
Mexico.
basically, which now, of course, the flip to that is, oh, hang on a minute, well, won't Mexico then go to war with the US? Um, no, I don't think so, because you'd have to think that they may well also want some of these heads of these cartels not involved. But what I'm saying is it's the little. It sounds small. Oh, we're going to call them terrorists. Like, oh, he's just doing that to sell it to people. But it's actually
Yeah,
more than that in terms of you can get people involved that way. But anyway, I just flag that one up because that was something I myself had to look into the detail of what that meant. But
yeah,
on the tariffs, um, yes, subdued in a sense. I think considered is probably my way of looking at it. I think what he's done is he is actually taking advice from Scott Besson and all the others who
yeah,
are looking at how it will work. But he's still in charge of how it's going to operate. And the point about these tariffs is that everyone should remember is it's not a one-time deal. They could go up again and again and again. They could go up and come down. They could go
yeah,
up and then be removed completely if he decides you're complying with whatever it is he particularly wants that day. So I think what the time, not doing it, not literally doing it on day one, simply has given them a bit of time to put out a bit of a framework about it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly that.
But I am, and also yes, it doesn't. It could have potentially perhaps hurt the market, and we do know he does care about the stock market.
Yes.
But then, what I look at now, right, with the Mexico and Canada ones on February 1st. Well, Canada doesn't have a government really. Okay,
No,
Mexico does.
not until at least March.
Yeah. So what exactly is going to happen between now and the 1st of February? Like, what's the difference really between doing it now and the 1st of February, other than a bit of tokenistic? Oh, I don't know. We've stopped a fentanyl gang or something. I don't
Yeah.
know, but I don't really see the difference that economically, logistically, really, about it's happening in 11 days rather than in 24 hours. What do you think?
Well, exactly that. I think it just, again, it's a difficult one. I think there's just, perhaps it's just as simple as there's enough going on at the moment to keep, the
Yeah.
media busy. Yeah, because we do know, like, he does know how to play the media and stuff.
Yeah.
So are we literally waiting for a slow news day for then he'll announce tariffs? I don't know. Um,
Possibly.
it's an interesting one to
Because
follow.
he does, obviously, as we've said, he wants to play the media cycle. He wants to get bang for his buck. And he is right in a
Yeah,
sense, because to get things done politically, you do need momentum, as we often say, but you need the like groundswell of support against you. So
yeah,
he's obviously decided Russia is one of the first things he does want to deal with. Well, he said it would be. So, there we go. He's getting on to that. The other one is China, of course, and the dangling of the tariffs there. Um, I'm sure they are coming. And I
yeah,
read somewhere, oh, it's a bit of relief. It's not as much as expected. Well, it's make up your mind, right? First of all, it was like, oh my God, tariffs are a nightmare. And then it's like, oh no, it's all absolutely fine. Oh yeah,
yeah,
these ones are
exactly. Yeah.
okay. Oh no, hang on a minute, he's going to ratchet them up later. I mean,
Well, an interesting one with China is obviously last time, if we remember Trump, Trump, was it President 25, 45?
mhm,
Um, with China, there was a lot of the kind of agricultural product quotas that
mm,
China needed to fill to avoid tariffs. So
yes.
I wonder if we're going to see a renewed push for that as well. So we'll kind of, and back then, we
Mm,
actually had China will have to buy million bushels of this and this and this and X amount of farm machinery from this and this company. And they were literally being pegged every week, where they stand
that's
against what
right.
they should be
Yes,
doing.
yes,
So,
yeah,
and then, there was that chart that was posted every week about
yeah,
the line of what China have actually done and
yeah. What
compared
they
to what China
promised to
needs to
do.
do.
Yeah.
So I wonder if we'll start seeing that, because that's, and before he was using stuff like that, hard data to
Mm,
benchmark where tariffs and how vocal to be about the potential of further tariffs. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do
yeah.
see a renewed, ags purchase demand order, or whatever we're going to call it. So
Yeah.
that'd definitely be what to look out
And
for. And
actually,
again,
yeah. Go on.
sorry, these are things as well that normally we get announced, but well, last time was being announced on Twitter before it was being
Yeah.
announced anywhere else. So again, but now obviously that'd be Truth Social. So as you said, yeah, I think it's definitely one to follow.
Yeah. And um, another reason why it might appear to be a bit more subdued, or is this time round, if you're smart and you're possibly on the receiving end, you would be wanting to get in first with, oh, so don't, I'm going to do something on this, or let's talk about
Yeah,
that, or it's different this time because effectively he doesn't have to be the aggressor because
no,
he already is the aggressor.
yeah,
So it's like other
yeah,
people act
exactly that.
first. The others can act first. If you're going to play a multi-round game, you want the other side to show their hand first, right?
Yeah, no, exactly that. That's why we're already seeing, like, China have already been making some like lumpy purchases of ags markets,
Mm,
and just saying the right things, and because they know they just want to get out in front of it, right?
exactly. And that's I guess what we're now going to see in this next couple of weeks. And Russia as
And
well.
potentially that's why he hasn't had to do anything for the tariffs yet either.
Hmm.
Putin has already said that, well, I think Putin and Zelensky are now, I'm not saying a ceasefire is on the cards or peace is about to break out in Ukraine, because it's not. But what I am saying is the language is starting to turn. Like, we're already talking about
Mm,
Zelensky yesterday at Davos, already talking about what the makeup of the peacekeeper
yeah,
forces.
exactly.
Putin's already sort of talking about finding time to sit down with both Trump and Zelensky, which 6 months ago, none of this would have been,
No.
none of this was remotely being said. So potentially that is another reason why Trump can hold fire for a little bit, because he almost just wants to give the potential people on the other side of the tariffs
Yes.
enough rope for them to kind of make up their own decisions, and at least come to him with some
Yeah. And it's the same story with
possible
the
solution.
TikTok deal. And,
Yes, exactly.
it's kind of dangling the whole, well, we can wrap this all up and get stuff sorted if you give me what I want. And the other side's a bit like,
Yeah,
oh, I don't know exactly what you want. And he's like, well, okay, what do you want? Well, what do you want? It's like, and at the end of the day, in those games of poker, the weaker hand has to show something. Now, it might decide to bluff, but it has to show first, really. So I guess
yeah.
that's what we're getting. And so, well, that could mean some quite dramatic shifts, uh,
Oh, yeah,
frankly, in the
exactly.
next
Look,
couple of weeks. You say
I think
peace,
it's
not you talk about. I mean, I think that peace in in Ukraine will start to get kind of priced in, no, in some way.
well, yeah, I think so. We're also, look, we're talking, markets already reacting, after the drill, baby drill, and
Mm,
deregulating oil production and whatnot. He's basically said as well, any pipeline you want, I'll sign it off, which is why we've seen crude getting smashed. So
mm,
yeah, it's already, markets are starting to price in, Trump era two,
mm.
the comeback, whatever we're going to call it. We need a catchy title, but yeah, so it's going to be real fun, I think, going
The
forward in the next
return
4 weeks.
of the Don. That's what someone
Oh
said
God.
to me. And
Pardon
yeah,
me.
no. There's actually I'll send it to you. There's a clip from Davos, which is now. So Trump speaking there by virtual today. That just shows you how irrelevant Davos has now become. The
Yeah.
president, like, is just like, he's gonna just pop up on a screen and be like, "Hi guys, do a little YMCA dance. Invest in America. God bless America." But there is a little clip that Richard found of two academics at Davos talking about Trump, and one saying that him being the comeback king is so unprecedented in the US and gives him so much power. Like, we should not
Yeah.
underestimate how powerful he is right now. And then the other one saying that Europe, on the back foot, obviously, but like has only just realizing, hang on a minute, we got this wrong, or what we're doing is
Yeah.
it's not working. It just simply isn't working, and that is a pretty fundamental shift,
Well, and we
basically.
heard, straight away Trump has. I know we're just going over now, so I know we're wrapping up, but just quickly to give you a guide of exactly what you said. Obviously, Trump straight away has rolled back the EV kind of quota and all that Biden put in. Said, look, we're not doing any of that. Europe overnight today, sorry, overnight, not overnight today, overnight,
Mm,
came out and said, because of the EU's EV policies, which has obviously hamstrung the European car manufacturers, they're now going to look to subsidize EU car manufacturing. Now,
mm,
Trump is going to look at that and go, hang on a second, that's state intervention. That is not good for business practices in the US.
mm,
Yeah, so if I was going to look anywhere for my next kind of true social headline that Trump pops out, it could be very well related to European car industry. Because if Europe is going to start, if the
mm,
EU is going to start throwing money at Volkswagen, BMW
mm.
to support their, the EV drive that EU were putting there themselves, then, you know, I can't see Trump's taking that lightly.
No, I think you've spot on there. Okay, well, we've run out of time. I've just I've just messaged you that little clip from Davos, and
Oh,
just to say to everyone, um, we will be doing more of these on a bit more of an ad hoc basis going forwards.
yeah.
But and probably be shorter and less waffly than what we've done today.
Well, I don't know about that. There's still be plenty
Uh,
of waffle, but yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. I think the sweet spot I think we've decided is, because there is going to be so much to talk about. It's just to jump on when something is happening or when something has happened.
Mm.
Short and sweet, something you can listen to while sat on the toilet. Perfect.
Wow, what a sales pitch! I'm sure everyone's going to love that.
To be honest, I actually think that's a very good hook.
Okay,
But anyway, moving
good.
on. But Helen, thank you
Yes.
as always. Big shout out to Richard in the background as well. If you don't already, please check out the Blonde Money website, and also all the awesome content they put out. You'll
Thank
see
you.
me sharing the day to day, which is awesome. A nice little roundup on what's going on in
Mm.
politics. Yeah, and we'll see you next time.
All right. See you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Di.
See you
Bye bye.
later. Bye.
Bye.
See you, Richard. Bye.